Welcome to the Jym Lyfe podcast. Welcome to the Jym Lyfe podcast. First time for the podcast in the gym. My business partner, my doctor, I think everybody's doctor, just so happy that we're finally doing this together. Dr. Jym Stoppani, guys.
Yes, awesome to be here on our own podcast. But the way things go with shooting and whatnot, getting content, we're running in two different directions half the time. So it's not that often that we actually do get to get together and make content together, kind of like the old days. So.
I know, and it's funny because you and I talked about that. It's always like we talk, we get on these calls and we have our weekly calls where, it's like so much about okay, we have our business discussions for JYMStoppani.com. And then the next day it's like product. And the next day it's like, marketing. And then hey, when do you and I ever get a chance to even.
And then the legal things.
Yeah, exactly. And then Jim's just always out there doing content every single day in the schedules. And so, finally, I think it was, last week we were talking about, how important it is, I think, for at least at some point you and I just doing kind of what we used to do.
Yeah, I mean, now the Jym Lyfe, what I like about the Jym Lyfe podcast as well as the Jym Facebook group, the Jym Army Facebook group, is that it sort of exists beyond me. And so it allows us to gather different content than just content that's generated by me, you know what I'm saying? So, but every once in a while, I pop on the Jym Army page, and every once in a while, I'm popping in on the Jym Lyfe.
Well, I mean, you know me, Jim. I will take any opportunity for you and I to sit there and chat, because I think just as
and I think we'll do this more often as well.
I really think it's important because there's so much out there. Because as I've always said, you've always been the source of information that people go to, and I think that's ultimately how this brand started, right? Me as a young kid, just looking at the stuff that you were writing, looking at what the marketplace, and just being very curious.
Yeah, and we're going back now to muscle and fitness.
Yeah, that's right. So for those of you who don't know, so Jim and I met in 2002, 2003, and I was 22. And
20 years ago.
God, Jesus. Oh, we're dating ourselves, right? But I literally would annoy him, and I was... Interestingly enough, do you remember who?
No, it was not that annoying because you asked me about bands.
That's right.
And I was just like, hey, somebody who doesn't think bands are for women, like, what did you say? Did you say bands? Yes. Let me tell you about the science of bands.
Do these things work? And you guys should have seen Jim's office.
I was so excited that somebody else wanted to talk about bands.
It was cool. We had a lot of great conversations, but ultimately, that's how it started, was asking questions. And I just remember when I would have that opportunity with you, I kind of felt bad, but I didn't at the same time, because I was just very curious. And every time, his door used to be locked, but you knew he was in there. And I was the only one with the courage enough to kind of knock. And they'd be like, what? Come on in, and come in. And his office was if you took this entire gym and consolidated it, I think down into
right into the bathroom.
Yeah, it's product in drawers, product over here. And I just had questions because you would get to read what you would write in the magazines. And sometimes, my background, as you and I know, I was a sports medicine guy, but they don't teach you supplementation. And
no, there is no course.
Right.
In supplementation.
And so
going, now that you're mentioning all those drawers, I wish I had some of those products just as a sort of museum,
Right. Except the one that puts you underneath the desk. So this is why, and we'll get into it, but this is why ingredient dosing is so important.
Exactly.
Jim, when people say oh, I had a bad experience of something because the dose was or something reaction.
I've already tried. I've tried maximum doses of probably every ingredient, good and bad experiences.
It was, and I won't mention the guy's name, but he's out there and he's a bro scientist.
Well, anyway, but it was Huperzine.
It was Huperzine.
Huperzine at about I think it was 100 times the upper limit dose.
Because it
forgot the
micrograms was it?
Yeah, it's in micrograms, but they put it in milligrams. A horrible experience. Now, Dynamine, on the other hand, I've had the same experience. Somebody did the math wrong.
Same thing.
And instead of taking, 50 milligrams, I got something like 5,000, 5 grams. But it was a good experience.
He didn't end up in Vegas, like walking the streets at 3 a.m., did you?
No, it wasn't like Fear and Loathing. But Dynamine, and we'll get into Dynamine a little bit,
right.
Is a little, it's a bit of a drug-like experience, especially when you're taking that high dose. But the nice thing is there's no crash with it. And it's such a short half-life that it doesn't ruin your day. So,
right.
But anyway.
It makes a good experience. Well, look, I mean, the cool thing is that for anybody who's listening, this is literally how you and I sat down, and I was just, I was frustrated, and because I had all these questions, and I would get the information from you, but I think like when you're trying to explain something that doesn't exist, it was really hard for me to interpret like what you're saying when you're like, Mike, when it comes to supplementation, you need, like, you can tell me how to do a dumbbell curl properly, and I can go pick up a dumbbell and do it based on that technique. But when this all started, I think that was just kind of like that aha moment, was you and I really doing this? And
yeah, and the thing was you were responsible for selling ads in the magazine. So he was working with these supplement brands, and my responsibility was to promote them and teach people how to use them and why they were beneficial. However, as we got into 2011, after 2010, we've been there about 10 years, it started going bad. The thing that really pissed me off was when supplement companies were lying to consumers that products were concentrated, and that a 3-gram dose was equivalent to, 10 or whatever. They're claiming that the brand chains in their pre-workout are concentrated versus the brand chains in others, and that's why you don't need a full dose. Wrong.
Right. But that's what and I'll be honest with you, and this, and maybe many people don't, is that I didn't even understand when you would say, Mike, these things are proprietary blends. Like, so a proprietary blend to me, from a consumer standpoint, and again, Jim knows this because we talked about it, was like, it's their secret formula. It's like Coca-Cola.
Yeah,
they're not. They're not allowed to give it up.
The Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe,
right?
It's under lock and key, right? And it's like, then I told you no.
Yeah,
the real truth of the matter. I mean, I would love for that to be the case. I would love for that to have been the case, that these companies had such powerful formulations, scientifically backed, tested, and and they didn't want anybody else to really know how much of this to put in and that to put in to get the effect,
But you were the first one doing it. You were the first one to call that out.
The reality of it was they were hiding that they were underdosing. That's what the thing is, and that's the problem with the industry. Really, it's a business. It's a business. In fact, I had no plans to ever get into the supplement business, because I'm not a businessman, and I understand the work that it takes to build a brand. But I was so frustrated when there was nothing that I could actually recommend for our readers of Muscle and Fitness to take. So I was recommending my own recipe, my own formulation, right? You take this much creatine, you take this much beta-alanine, this much betaine before your workouts. And by thousands and thousands of users, everybody loved it, right?
When you would say that, I would go out and try to find the brands.
Exactly.
And say, Cytosport. And
this has the amount of beta-alanine that Jim recommends. And it's
nothing, right. And remember, we would go in the magazine, and you would write like this article. We actually have one framed in the office. It was post-workout recovery. And you talked about dextrose, even alpha-lipoic acid, betaine, and I think beta-alanine. That's kind of like, the ingredients. And then right below it, it was like basically what I did, which was there was like 6 products
that would have these ingredients.
But it didn't.
Right. Not at the proper doses.
Right. It didn't. And I didn't know that. because I was like, where can I buy this product that you would recommend? And I remember you telling me, and I won't name the brand, but I brought that product up to you. I'm like, dude, you're like, you're taking that shit? I'm like, yeah. You're like,
there's no creatine in there, you know. I know there's creatine listed on the label, but
yeah, there's nothing.
As effective dose, it's pretty much pixie dust.
So I think from a consumer standpoint, like, you're pissed off, but like, why did you want to like start JYM? Like, there's a story behind it, but like, why?
I wanted people to see what a real supplement should look, you know, what, and that's why I started with Pre JYM, right? We started with the pre-workout.
But why not protein at the time?
So, well, with protein, so I think most of the lying in the supplement industry was in the pre-workout category, right? And that's what this is concentrated, this has this in it, this has this does this. They were putting in these questionable stimulants. Protein, on the other hand, we can get into protein spiking, which is why I finally came up. But I had no intentions of starting a supplement business. And even when I started Pre JYM, it was really going to be Pre JYM and Post JYM.
Yep.
And pretty much that was it, because you really couldn't make much money in the protein category, and it was so saturated with brands that already sort of owned the landscape, and people were just buying like Optimum, right?
Right.
So to kind of create a protein that could compete with them would be hard until
it was
protein spiking started. And protein spiking is you take an amino acid. And now when we're talking about amino acids, we usually think about the amino acids that are building blocks for our muscle, like the branch chain amino acids, leucine, isoleucine, arginine, you're thinking of glutamine, even methionine and lysine, all these essential. But what they were doing is putting in amino acids like taurine.
Glycine.
Which are cheap. But taurine's not, glycine at least goes to muscle building. Taurine isn't even used for muscle building, right? But it contains nitrogen, and that's how they measure the protein content in the protein powder. So you put in all these other nitrogen sources, and suddenly your protein,
and that was spiking.
And so let's just say it was whey, just to make it simple, you've got a container of whey protein, and on the back of the label it says 20 grams of protein, but 5 to even 10 grams of that isn't actual whey protein. It's amino acids.
You think you're getting
and not even
whey.
Amino acids that are building blocks. It's things like taurine. Yeah, taurine has benefits. It's in Pre JYM. It's in Post JYM. We want to keep our muscles high in taurine for energy levels, but for muscle building, it has nothing. It's just a way for them to cheapen their price.
Costs,
their costs.
But that was the ultimate decision, because I remember when that was going on. Because I remember we were working, obviously, with bodybuilding.com at the time. We were exclusive. And they're like, you know, why don't you, and if I remember, they're like, why don't you guys just do a protein powder? You're like, why? But then I remember when that started coming out, and people were asking you. And I went down, and I'm like, Jim, what is protein spiking? And you were like looking around to try and like show me the example on the bottle. And I think that's when you're like, we should just do our own so I can actually show people what it needs to be.
And that's really the whole basis of the JYM line, that these are actual tools that I use to educate. That's what I am, an educator, right? So I'm not a businessman. So how do I develop?
I'll debate you on that. You are kind of good at it. I'm just saying, I know you don't
but again, because I'm an educator, I educate, right? I don't sell people supplements. I educate them on why these can help you. And it sells because of that, right? So that was the whole point, was how do I create a business that's based on education? And it's by creating the actual products that are the educators, right? If I tell you how much betaine, beta-alanine you should have in your pre-workout, how much branch chains, that's one thing. But then to go find it, like you said, is tough. So instead of me just trying to say this is what you need, and hey, by the way, it's not out there. Here it is. Well, and again, with Pre JYM, the formula was already out there. The foundational formula was already out there, and people were using it already. So when we launched Pre JYM in 2013, July 19th exactly, it was an overnight success because people already knew the formula worked.
Well, and it provided, and you and I talked about always being bulletproof in everything, because I remember when we were talking about doing it, when we early on, and you're like, look, you wanted to protect your integrity, as an educator, as somebody, as a resource for people to come to and say, Jim, what do I take? And without being biased. And I think that's when you and I had a lot of dialogue. It's like, you're not being biased when you're authentic. And the nice thing about that history, like 10 decades of writing about this stuff, I remember when, because we took a lot of shots from the critics as well as some of the other brands, more importantly, who would hire these guys to criticize and say, oh, Jim Stoppani finally sold out. But we had 10 years of publishing where it's like, he didn't sold out. He's been telling you what to do for the last 10 years. But all you guys are just, I'm sorry to say, kind of scammy to where you didn't listen and do what he did because it was too expensive.
And the reason they said I sold out is because I was no longer helping them sell that.
And that's the thing. Right.
Right. And now I'm no longer, right? I was the darling of the supplement industry.
Right.
Because at Muscle and Fitness, I'm telling people about ingredients and how to use them. And every supplement manufacturer out there loves me because I'm basically selling their products for them, because I wasn't putting a brand on there, but telling them. So everybody in the supplement industry, then when I suddenly had my own brand, the entire industry hated me.
Well, exactly. And to verify that, guys, I'm not joking you, because I was always in contact with all the supplement companies for advertising and publishing and marketing and all that stuff. And it was like, they all wanted access to you. Remember when I used to ask you like to come on trips and stuff? Yep. And we went on a few together, and there was one time you're like, dude, I'm not ever going on a trip again with that guy. But these brands, guys, were so aware of Jym that when it got kind of towards the tail end, we even had
now of course, for those who are younger, this is going back before social media, even before the internet.
Social media,
I mean, bodybuilding.com really didn't even exist yet. I mean, they were there, but they were
not the powerhouse.
They were in a garage. They were literally working. He was working out of his garage in 2002, I believe, right? Still. So again, these were the magazines, and it was like the sole source that everyone got their information from. Right. So everyone knew who I was. Now you go on and you can go to any, Instagram, and there's 40,000 people telling you how to work out.
And that's the thing about, and I do want to get into that because I got a little bit of a chip on my shoulder about that. Is that if you're new to this brand and you're new listening in, and this is, look, it's not a self-serving interest, because Jym and I are business partners and we have a mutual interest in the success of this brand, but the authenticity of who you are, it's like, and we've talked about this before, all the education and all the things that you did, you never had the intent to do this, but it was like the industry called somebody. It needed somebody at that time to kind of set a balance to it. And you were that guy. In 2003, for those of you who don't know, Jym was supposed to be the lead on a group. We were trying to form a group of like setting an industry standard to not allow some of the stuff that was going on at the times, which would result in nefarious products being brought to marketplace, a regulatory body. Jym was called to be basically the arbiter of truth, if you will, of misclassifications of products that would essentially be brought to the market. So what that means is let's say I wanted to start a supplement brand, and I get somebody to financially back me. I cheapen my ingredients, and then I go ahead and I bring it to GNC and bring it to the marketplace. It would go through a process in which it would cross Jim's desk.
Right. And we would make sure that the ingredients that were used were proper ingredients, safe, effective, and more importantly, the dosing.
Right.
If they're putting in 500 milligrams of creatine, no.
Right.
That would be a no. But again, that would have required a lot of the supplement manufacturers to agree to this.
And they didn't.
And that's the problem. You're never going to get.
And we sat in a room. So we were in, it was like 2003, because the same year that I think.
And to be honest, we're not the only people who've tried this. Others have, others that we know as well have tried this past, more previously. But getting a regulatory body together on the science of supplements is, but like you said, it goes back to your comment. There's no degree in supplements. Right. So how do you how do you regulate the science of it when there's no, you can't get a degree in it. So who's deciding what's correct and what's not correct? Right. But what people think about the supplement industry is that it's BS. But when you remember, where did aspirin come from? It came from the bark of the willow tree. It was a supplement at one time.
Ayurvedic medicine.
Salicylic acid. Right. That's what it is, right? So most medicines started as a natural compound, which is what supplements are, right? They're chemicals, phytochemicals, usually right from plants, that have properties that are beneficial to humans when you take them. Right. The pharmaceutical industry is heavily regulated, but the supplement industry is not. Right. You know, and again, it gets back to the fact that there's nobody teaching anybody about supplements. There's nowhere to go.
Well, the consumers had
at an institutionalized setting, higher education. Can you go to learn about supplements?
Well, you said you used an analogy one time. I remember we were sitting outside of the Renaissance Hotel in Vegas, and you kind of used the analogy of like, you use a lot, but you said, imagine if the food industry could get away with putting in high fructose corn syrup and trans fats in foods.
Right.
They would. They would.
Of course.
But it was
consumers who said no.
Right.
No, I don't want trans fats. I'm not. If you got trans fats in your product, I'm not buying it.
So getting back to the pre-workout.
And that's sort of what we did with the pre-workout is we educated people and sort of set that bar for them. Look, you guys you're the ones who got rid of trans fats. Right. It wasn't the food industry. It was you, the consumer. You got rid of them. You just said, no, we're not buying this product. That forced food manufacturers to take it out because you wouldn't buy their products if they kept it in there, right? So that's what I was trying to do. What we were both trying to do is educate the consumer on saying no to the proprietary blends, to the concentrates. Don't give them you're giving people money to continue lying to you.
Right. And the thing is, it's not completely gone, because I think
no, of course not. It never will be, unfortunately.
Well, and I think that's
and it gets to the fact that people don't know enough about supplements, so you can tell them it's concentrated. Right. Those concentrated supplements we're selling. They're not working. They were selling. When I say working, I mean working for the company. They were making them money. Right. And everybody jumped on the bandwagon. Right. They said, "Wait a minute, they're selling a 3-gram scoop or a 5-gram scoop, and we're selling 10 grams, their cost is at least half of ours. Right. We need to do the same thing." So everybody jumped on that bandwagon and started lying. And they could, because the consumer didn't know. Right. Oh, it's concentrated. Right. Why would they lie to me? They shouldn't be able to lie to me.
It was a race to the bottom, literally.
Yes, they can lie to you. Believe it.
Exactly. And what Jym is referring to is that was what that aha moment was for me. Was I think you literally said just that. And you're like, it's a race to the bottom to where and I'm like, in the most basic form.
And if it continued, again, like I said, supplements started, supplements created the pharmaceutical industry, but it's companies that are lying to consumers that are killing the name of supplements. They're ruining the perception. People think that supplements are a joke. Or
a dirty word. Right. But you take supplements, you take snake oil.
And yeah, you're right, because the products that you're buying don't have the actual dosing. Right. That it's like the ibuprofen example I gave, right? The one thing about ibuprofen, we all know, when you buy ibuprofen, the dose is right around 200 milligrams, maybe 220, somewhere right around there, right? That's an effective dose. That's established. There's no company that can put out an ibuprofen product that has 100 milligrams or let's say 50 milligrams.
You want your fever to go down, it takes that.
But to be effective, right? But what if a company did that? What if they had a hot spot at some highly traveled store where people came in and out and they saw this really cheap ibuprofen? Nobody reads the back of the label, but it was half the price that they normally pay, but it was only 50 milligrams, right? They would buy that, right? And then ibuprofen wouldn't work. And ibuprofen would no longer work. And then suddenly ibuprofen is a joke, right? No, it's not a joke at the right dose, right? You know? So
with pre
JYM, that's what, that's basically why we started JYM, JYM Supplement Science, to stop that.
Because that was most things in the marketplace. And I remember we were sitting in your front yard and there's a video. It's called, scoop size,
comparison.
scoop size comparison. And we literally went to, and this is funny because now I'm seeing all these brands now kind of do their own form of it, and it's just
right.
In some way I'm happy.
I mean, not exactly what we wanted, what we created with Pre JYM, the original Pre JYM. We can talk about Pre JYM X soon, but when that launched almost 9 years ago, this July be 9 years. It really was to show and to save the industry. It was to save it was literally to save. It kind of sounds a little.
It's not though.
Sensational, but to be honest with you, we literally tried with the regulatory committee. That didn't work.
Right.
And finally, I'm like, the only thing that's going to work is to show them what to take. They provide it to them. That's the only way we're going to change the industry. And now, try to find a 3-gram scoop of pre-workout. Oh, you can, but that used to be the norm.
Right.
When you would go to bodybuilding, the old days, bodybuilding.com, when now you go to Amazon, right? Back then, if you went to any of these websites or you went into GNC and looked at a pre-workout, the majority of them were under 5 grams at one time.
Right.
That's no longer the case. So it's a win for everyone.
I agree.
Unfortunately,
but
they're still not doing it.
Well, and that's the thing is that so
it's better though. It's better.
You put in, I remember when we came out with, this is the first Pre JYM right here, and something that really stood out to me, because I'll be honest with you.
Look at that, the original.
So it's crazy.
For those who don't
go
back with us 9 years, this is the original Pre JYM bottle, the label.
I think this might have been the first one
that we launched in 2013.
Probably was. I actually have the first one that I got. When it was sent to me, I still have the original bottle. But the thing that stood out to me on this, when because it was you and I both were a part of the decision making and getting all this stuff done, and you made it real important to put this 6 grams BCAAs, 6 grams citrulline malate, 2 grams creatine hydrochloride, 2 grams beta alanine, 1.5 grams betaine on here on the front. Now there's other ingredients in here.
Sure.
But I remember you saying to me, you're like, Mike, if most pre-workouts could just get there,
right, we'd be good.
Consumers would have a much better option.
Yes.
But you were the one, because we see a lot of pre-workouts today where they're using those catchy ingredients now. But I'm going to say this, I think you're the godfather of the new generation of pre-workouts, because before you formulated this and before we brought it to market, there was no standard that existed for consumers to have any awareness of what to look for.
Right.
Like none. And now, because
it was a stimulant war.
It was a stim war. But
it was like, what gets me the highest?
Exactly. But you were the first one, Jym, because certainly I had no idea about formulation. I'm just like asking as a consumer, lucky enough to be in the same room to where we formed a business about it. But I really was a consumer. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I need to understand what it is to put in here, and then see what you're saying, and then figure out a way to regurgitate that to millions of people to where they get that message.
So they understand it.
Right. But these, okay, so let's just stick with these 5, because we see many of these ingredients now in most pre-workouts. What was the decision behind? I think it's important. I know it's a question that I could answer for myself, but for people who are just listening or realizing who you are for the first time, why these 5, so to speak?
Right. Well, as I was saying, when we talked about proprietary blends, we wish that they were hiding some secret formula they had created that was amazing, right? Unfortunately, most supplement companies don't even have a scientist who works for them.
Right.
It's literally buzzword. What's the hot ingredient?
Correct.
Throw it in there. It doesn't matter what dosing it is, as long as it's on there so that people can see and go, oh, it's got creatine. Oh, it's got, right? But
because this is going to lead me into this, which I want to get to eventually. But I want to know why.
The way that this was formulated was not, oh, what should I throw in a pre-workout? This was formulated based on years of recommending ingredients and trying ingredients in the actual gym with the clients that I was working with. And then at the magazines, because I had a readership that was following me, we could test things by the thousands and thousands of people, right? And get feedback from them. And what I kept landing on were those ingredients that you needed, the real ingredient. Again, most people think a pre-workout is a stim, right? I want to get
and that's coming
up.
Back.
I want to get stimmed up.
And that's coming back.
Any real bodybuilder, any real weightlifter will tell you, if that's what you need to get to the gym, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
If you need every workout to have something to stim you up,
something else is off.
Something's wrong.
Right.
With your nutrition, with your training, there's something off, right? You're never going to make gains that way. You know, the drive has to come.
If you're looking for that
within.
stim.
Now,
yeah.
Does Pre JYM X light you up? Yes. Right. And it's designed for those days where you need to be lit up. Yeah. When we get into Project X, right? You need to be lit up on those 30. I need to be. I need
4 sets of 30 reps, right?
But every day you do not need to feel, or you shouldn't need to feel that way. And what I was educating long before Pre JYM ever came out, long before the pre-workout category turned into a stimulant war, was nutrients.
Right.
Like, what is going to...
Nutrients versus stimulants.
Yes. What is going to enhance your workout, and what is going to enhance your results after the workout's over. Right?
And that's what we saw with the results
caffeine.
of this.
Sure, caffeine has benefits, right? Caffeine, sure. Caffeine is one of the few ingredients that if you take enough, it will actually give you an immediate effect. You feel it, but also in strength. There's research that shows at a high dose, okay, at least 300 milligrams, you get a strength boost, immediate strength boost from taking caffeine. But the real magic of Pre JYM is the branch chains, the beta-alanine, the betaine, the citrulline malate. These are ingredients and true nutrients that enhance the way your body gets energy, the way your body contracts the muscle, right? And the way your body recovers.
Right.
And that's what weightlifting is about, right? That's what training is about. It's not about getting stimmed up and feeling crazy and coming to the gym, you know?
Right.
If that's what you're doing, you're missing out because you're not getting those ingredients that are really going to maximize your workout and your results after.
Right. And that was what we saw immediately. I think when people started taking this, there were two takeaways. There was one side where people were like, I have clean energy, strength, no crash. Because that was exactly the things they weren't getting from those other products. And so those are the three takeaways. And this thing just took off like a rocket ship. And, you know, but it was funny because I think some of the critics were out there trying to say, oh, well, you know, you don't need a protein scoop size. You know, it was just interesting how you looked at, and that was critics coming from consumers, not the critics who were trying to, you know, people were saying, well, why is a scoop size so big? It's inconvenient to have so much.
Right,
It was like a re-education.
Right, yeah. Exactly. That's the thing. People were complaining about getting too much. And I'm like, you're complaining that you're getting more?
We actually have an article.
You're complaining. I was like, that's like going to the store and paying for a quart of milk, but getting a gallon and being mad. Like, I don't want the whole gallon for that cheap price. I want to pay more for this gallon. Yeah, it's not going to fit in my, like, what? I've given you more. But again, they were so conditioned to think that this tiny little scoop was like, I was doing it wrong because I couldn't figure out how to concentrate. Whereas everybody else could get it down to 3 grams, and it was so easy to mix, Jim, and tasted great. Well, of course, there's nothing in there.
You're a scientist. Figure out how to condense
it. There's more grams of flavoring in your pre-workout scoop than there is of ingredients.
Right.
More grams of flavor.
Right. Exactly.
So yes, of course it tastes good, you know?
And this is stood because this was a part of, you know, a system, which we don't want to have to go down that rabbit hole because I know, you know, we're working on a time slot here, but that's when I started seeing that there was a system involved in your formulation process. And what we noticed was that when we would launch something, the explanation of that synergy of products to product, I think we were the only brand to where literally you could take almost every single product on a daily basis because it was a part of a larger system.
That's right. They work together. And that's the importance of the non-proprietary blend. What if you're taking a fat burner or something and it doesn't tell you how much caffeine?
Right.
And then you're taking a pre-workout that also doesn't tell you how much caffeine.
Right. You're screwed.
You don't know how much caffeine you've taken in a day. You need to know how much caffeine, particularly if you're sensitive or you're not. You need to know. And I thought that, that's not just wrong, it's irresponsible.
Right.
I provide those ingredients, the dosing, so that you can see, I'm getting 300 now. If I take Jym's fat burner, I'm getting another 200 milligrams. That's fine. That's good. That's okay for me. Another person might be, I can't go over 300 milligrams of caffeine a day. They need to know that. That's just one reason why you need to know. But the importance is that these ingredients all work together, particularly pre-gym and post-gym.
Right.
Right. And one of the things that critics say is when they review a product, they review just the product.
Right.
They don't review, he has a pre-workout
do we have post-gym around here?
With a post-workout, right? So that you're getting your creatine, your betaine, your beta-alanine, your branch chains before you train. Then you're getting another dose after. And we can talk about the benefits of that. But what was happening is people would review this and go, it's not that good of a pre-workout because it only
this is years later.
2 grams of beta-alanine. And it's just like,
there's a system there.
Yes. You take it before and after because you're better off getting multiple doses. And the best time to take an ingredient is around workouts.
Right. Before. And that led to, because I think that when we started seeing that shift in the industry, where now people are like, okay, Jym figured it out. He's finally talking about ingredients, talking about these 5 must-have ingredients, talking about, products. And as you said, rating pre-work. It's almost like it was a race to the top essentially, right?
Right. Yes.
Let's start reversing course and start putting in more and more and more.
Yeah.
And more.
Jym's got 6 grams of citrulline. Let's put in 8.
Exactly. And you and I started noticing this and you're like, they're still missing it because maybe they're just hanging their hat on the fact like, we have 8 grams of citrulline malate and we have this, but there's no branch chains. There was no branch chains or something,
no
right?
beta-alanine.
So how did this come about based on now Pre-X, guys, is the next generation of pre-workouts that we've launched, but it took a long time. And a lot of people don't understand this, that it wasn't just, let's double everything up.
Right.
Let's just put those 2 products in a bottle and double it and call it a day, right? Right. If you guys understood my frustration, that when I mean frustration, because when you hit deadlines, when you have deadlines, you're like, hey, we're going to do this. Now the formulation process in terms of the thinking took years to get to the point to where you literally created almost like an algorithm to create that. Talk about that for a little bit.
So when we were working on Pre JYM X, I started with the base. Can I have any of the pre's? I started with the base formula, right?
Here, use this
Pre
one.
JYM, the Pre JYM formula. So everything that's in Pre JYM is in Pre JYM X, right? But then, I increased those ingredients. We doubled up on the creatine. We doubled up on the beta-alanine and the betaine, mainly, like I was saying, to silence the critics who look at this as a single ingredient, okay? There's your dosing, right? However, there's a new study now showing that you only need 2 grams of beta-alanine.
Well, right, because it's about saturating the muscles.
Exactly.
Right.
But anyway, so we have that in there for the people that, A, want to critically review this, and B, don't want to
Well, what we found out,
have to take the post if you don't want to have to take the post.
But one thing too that we found out was also placement of product within the marketplace, because when we were exclusively on bodybuilding.com and we're online, we could get in front of the consumer to explain the process of the pre and the post, yes, right? As a system, as a synergy, sell them together. When you start putting products on like a shelf, and that story, that education is not in front of just, you know, the kid walking in.
It's not there at Amazon.
Right.
It's not there at GNC.
So they're pulling down one product versus understanding the benefits of both. And so that's where we actually start talking. And you're like, well, let's look at this for a longer period of time. But to get here, it was a process.
Yes. And so that's just those ingredients. But then what I did is I broke down the main components of your pre-workout, right? So you have, if you look on the back of the bottle, right, we broke it down into the muscle matrix. So those are your main nutrients, right?
Right.
That you're getting, your beta-alanine, your betaine, your branch chains, right? Those are all your amino acids that are actually physically enhancing the muscle. But then I broke it up into the nootropics, right? That sort of mind, energy, and then the pump. And so what I did is I took the base formula and then I started testing different ingredients for just pump, right? Or just the nootropics separately, right? And remember I was sending our staff and Gym Army people literally hundreds and hundreds of samples of products that had different doses and different ingredients, so that we found what created the best pump and the best focus, the best drive, right? And so if you want to talk about the details on the pump,
right,
we landed on bumping up the nitrate component. There's 860 milligrams of it's unheard of. 860 milligrams. You try to find me a brand that has 500 milligrams of nitrates in their dose. You want to try 860 milligrams?
Yeah, it's insane.
And then I have the pine bark. And what's the pine bark for? Along with the increase in citrulline malate, right? Mm-hmm. So we've got now more citrulline malate and the pine bark. Right. And so you've got two pathways creating nitric oxide in the body, and the nitric oxide is what gives you that pump because it widens the blood vessels. You get more blood flow going to the muscles. That delivers more nutrients, more water. That water goes into the muscle and literally swells the muscle. Right. That's your pump, right? So with those two pathways, we have arginine creating nitric oxide, which is what the citrulline is. Citrulline is just another form of arginine, but it's taken up by the body better than arginine and gets converted into arginine better.
You used to say it was like arginine in sheep's clothing or something like that. Or there's an analogy.
So the problem with arginine is when you take arginine, it gets broken down in the intestines, right? There's actually an enzyme that breaks it down. Not so for citrulline. So citrulline sort of sneaks through, and then the body converts it into arginine.
Right. So when companies utilize arginine as their pump enhancer versus citrulline, what would you say?
I'd say why not use citrulline? I mean, it's already and you know you'll see all these different forms of arginine out there, right? Arginine AKG, right? And my take is and there are all ways to try to increase the uptake of arginine because it's poorly taken up. And I'm like, but the science already proved what works. It's called citrulline.
But that's to your point, though.
And there's a study showing that if you take 4 grams of citrulline and 4 grams of arginine, guess what raises your arginine levels in the body better? The citrulline.
Right. But that's where I think the industry, sadly, because there have been critics out there who are now trying to basically, they're the guys who were in the forums back when we started, really, right? And so what you have is you have this fragmented platform of information where, like, it used to be the magazine, you own that. Then it was bodybuilding.com, you own that. Then it was social media, you started to own that, but now everyone could have their own platform. Everyone can do it. So everyone's an expert. And what I'm seeing, Jim, I want to ask you this question because I literally saw somebody who reviewed this. And, you know, they got a big following and all that. They're like a bro scientist. And he goes, yeah, it's a good product, but I don't know why he has beta-alanine in there or BCAAs in there.
Right. And so you have to remember, a little bit of knowledge.
I was shocked.
A little bit of knowledge is dangerous.
Dude.
A little bit of knowledge is dangerous. And so I've been fighting the beta-alanine thing since I launched Pre JYM. Why are you putting beta-alanine in there? The research on beta-alanine, yes, they gave it to them twice a day, but they didn't give it to them around workouts. Yeah. They just had them take it whenever they could, randomly. So you're complaining that I'm giving you precise timing when the study was just random times, so you want random is better just because the study did that? Now, I know the guy who did most of the studies on beta-alanine, Jay Hoffman. We were both at UConn together. He's a good friend of mine.
So you just didn't read about it like some of these other guys do,
he's a good friend of mine.
Got it.
Does Jay Hoffman use beta-alanine? Hell no. Jay, do you even work out still? Again, I'm sure he works out, but at a hardcore level, no, right? He's on committees, he's in academia. He knows very little about the actual day-to-day use and how athletes.
Practical application.
Right. So how do you get subjects to take an ingredient? Well, you just try to get, they're going to take it twice a day. You just try to have them take it around some meal, right? A better way would be around workouts. Why? Well, first of all, convenience. When are you thinking about supplementation? Random times a day? Oh, it's 8 a.m. I'm at work. I better take my beta-alanine. Or, hey, it's time to go to the gym. Maybe I should take my beta-alanine, right? Reason number one for me.
Right.
Reason number two is we know when muscle is stimulated, it takes up nutrients better.
Right.
Hey, when would you want to take your nutrients? At a time when you're sitting around and the muscles aren't maximizing their uptake?
When blood is getting into the muscle.
When you're
carrying the nutrients into the muscle.
And second, with beta-alanine in particular, what the bro scientists don't know is it's a neurostim. It stimulates your nervous system. So,
but that's what they say, dude, is they're like, I don't like that.
Would you want to take that before bed? There's people who take post-gym and can't sleep at night.
Right.
And we realize it's the beta-alanine. Some people are hypersensitive to the beta-alanine. So would you take your beta-alanine before bed when it might disturb your sleep? Or would you take it before a workout when the stimulant, when a neurostim is going to give you a little more drive? When would you take it?
Right. Around workouts.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right? It's a stimulant.
Right. Right.
And with all the other stimulants, it adds to the overall. So
why would, see, that's the thing is like.
Why would they say?
Why are they even trying
because they don't, like I said, a little bit of knowledge
is dangerous.
Right? What else do they say shouldn't be in a pre-workout?
Well, and that's the thing. Because like
leucine, branch chains,
right? Branch chains. And even, I heard this one, I'm no joke. Why creatine? You could just, it doesn't need to be in there. You can just go buy a creatine over here. And I'm like,
again,
to spend more money.
When would you take creatine? At a random time of day.
Right.
Or would you want to take it when the uptake is going to be enhanced?
So, because the other thing is like BCAAs, you don't want BCAAs in your pre-workout. Why are they in Pre JYM X? I'm asking on behalf of,
it depends on the person, right? A lot of people think it's useless to have branch chains in your pre-workout because leucine doesn't turn on muscle protein synthesis till you're resting. So why would you waste it? Because it's an energy source. Every amino acid that you consume goes to your liver. The majority of them get broken down by the liver, oxidized, converted into fat, converted into glucose, or they might get reconverted into an amino acid, maybe, right? That's what the liver decides. The only three amino acids, I'll say it again, the only 3 amino acids that don't get broken down in the liver are the 3 branch chains. They get a pass. The liver goes, you guys are so critical for energy, we're going to let you go right to the muscle, right to the tissues of the body, right? So anyone who's using that analogy doesn't understand the fact that they're used.
Because they're in here for energy. Energy.
Yes, in the pre-workout.
Yes.
In your post-workout.
It's for recovery.
That's when it stimulates, right? But these amino acids get used directly as a fuel source. But
that's why, Jim.
And
you didn't increase BCAAs in here, did you, for pre-workout, right?
No, exactly.
It's the same amount, right? Okay.
It's already enough, right?
This is the shit that I think people just need to hear.
The other thing that people always focus on leucine, because in your post-workout, it turns on muscle protein synthesis. It literally stimulates mTOR, right?
Right.
Like a key. It literally, without enough leucine, you're never going to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. You have to have enough leucine, at least 3 grams, right? In a pre-workout, the most valuable player is not leucine. It's valine. Why? Because valine gets taken up by the brain, okay? What else gets taken up by the brain when you exercise? Tryptophan. And when tryptophan gets taken up by the brain, it gets converted to serotonin. And serotonin is a nice feeling compound, but you don't want that during the workout. It makes you sluggish. And the research that was being done on this was done at University of Connecticut. Now, it was in the nutrition department, but the nutrition department was working directly with us in the exercise.
Weren't you there?
Physiology, yes. I was actually there while we were running runners on the treadmill and giving them branch chains to see. And what does it do? It enhances their performance.
Right. And that's the thing, guys.
So he
literally witnessed doing this.
Yeah. There's scientists. And again, if you look at the scientists, these are the guys that don't work out, right? Okay. And again,
I know what you mean, dude. Like, I know what you mean.
You know, like you can't recommend how to take a supplement unless you've used the actual supplement. Right. I don't care what degree you have or where you went to school. Practical I did my postdoc at Yale University School of Medicine, and I can also work out.
I know what a bicep curl is.
So unless you work out, I don't care what you say, but these little pencil necks say, well, there's rat studies that show that leucine actually decreases performance. Really? Because every human study I've seen shows that it can enhance energy and performance. And again, based on
when you're trying to put an inch on your arm and you've done it.
Yes.
I think that's a little bit of a street cred.
And so that's where we are with the branch chains. Right. Is why the critics who really don't understand.
Because they're comparing these products that are in the marketplace right now that tried to one up Pre JYM, haven't really gotten the hockey stick, popularity and results like we have with that. So what they've done is they've tried to almost kind of tear down some of the things. I look at it from a pure standpoint of, number one, what I've learned from you, what's not in there, what you've always told me what needs to be in there. But then also because we have the opportunity to look at cost of ingredients. And so the messaging behind some of that stuff, guys, just so you know, when certain BCAAs are fucking expensive. Okay. So it's very easy to then create a narrative on a platform where you have following to say, I left them out because of this, but really you left them out because you didn't want to put them in because it's too expensive.
Remember, for every study that shows an ingredient is beneficial, you will find one that shows it's not, right?
Right.
So all you do is cherry pick your research and say, oh, he's got branch chains in his and we don't. How can we prove he's wrong?
Right.
Let's find a study that shows in rats, leucine did this.
Right. And hang our hat on it.
And it's like, it's not even a direct study. It's like, well, based on the pathway that it would decrease their performance, or it could. And that's the study. Whereas we have human studies with people actually taking the branch chain showing that they get an enhancement in energy, performance.
And the best human anecdotal evidence that we found has been the consumers, you guys, and the
real athletes,
people.
I'm not talking about competitive athletes, guys. I'm talking about you guys, the guys in the gym, working out. Right. That's the difference. Is the problem with a lot of research studies is it's not the population that's using the product. They're newbies a lot of times. Right. And when you give a newbie an ingredient, well, the newbie gets such gains from neural.
It's like HMB.
We
don't want to go down there.
But what I'm saying is, you're not going to give somebody a newbie a creatine and expect them to gain 10 pounds more than another guy who wasn't taking creatine because they're newbies. They're both going to gain 10 pounds, regardless of, because they started working out. They were doing nothing and now they're working out, right? They're going to gain 10 pounds of muscle, whether they take creatine, whether they just drink water, right? Their muscles are primed because when you're starting here, you've got a big, but when you're up here,
it's harder.
This is who we're working with. Now, this is who I'm talking to.
Yes.
Okay. If you're down here, sure, you don't need the creatine. You probably don't need the branch chains. But if you're here, trying to get to here, good luck getting here without the branch chains.
And from the
you know what I'm saying?
And that's the nice thing I think about the way in which we are at from just our personalities and the things that we can bring to the table is you've always said, like, I'm always the consumer. I get to ask questions. Maybe some people will be too embarrassed to, or maybe intimidated or whatever. I get to ask the question still as a consumer. Now, granted, over the years, like, I've learned a lot. Okay. But number one, I could never in my wildest, I'm so lucky to be doing this with you. And I mean that. Like, every day I wake up and I am like so thankful of like how the stars align to where you and I have been able to come together to do these things. And more importantly, I'm still in amazement of who you are and what you've done for me and then what you've done for this industry and what you've done for our consumers. And the thing is I feel like I've been a part of being able to be a part of that process with you. And it's exciting, and it gives me so much runway in terms of like where we're going with things. And I feel like we're not done. And I'd like to ask you one final question, which is, where do you see us kind of going in the next several years and things like, what are we just done, or are we just going to continue? Like, what are we going to do?
Yeah, well, we're never done because there's always something that needs to be fixed in the industry.
Right.
I can't always predict what that would be, but there'll be something that will be changing. Now, in the immediate future, we're working on Pre JYM RTD, ready to drink, so that you can get it right after. You don't have to mix it up. It'll be sold in gyms likely, so that
more grab and go. But it's funny because when you talked about that, there would be some tweaks, and we don't have to get into it.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
To make sure that there is that, we always think a couple things is, number one, it starts with like the science in the form of like, this is like everything that you want, right? But now how do we get it to actually function with everyone who wants it, and in a way that most people can afford it and still get the benefits? It's like, of course, there's always going to be scale of, I would love to have like a car that drives like a Ferrari, has wings on it, and flies me around. It's like, of course,
Of course, but what's the price?
What's the practical application of that idea? Yeah. And so that's where we're working on different things, but it's exciting, Jim.
Yeah, and that's the other thing to remember in the industry is that when we make a product, there's a price tag that we got to be cognizant of because it costs money.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I can make the best product, but if it's not cost effective, there's no one that's going to be able to buy that and use that. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
So, and that's what the nice thing about the challenge is not having to cut corners. Right. And finding those ingredients at the right doses that works, and it's still within the reach for, look, I get it. Pre JYM X for most people is very expensive. Look what you're getting again, right? We used to be talking about 3 to 5 gram scoops. Now you're looking at almost a 38 gram scoop here. It's like a protein size scoop, but you get what you pay for.
And most brands are shifting towards this, and that's been the path that.
But regardless, we're not charging $100 for
no,
this.
Most brands, to get the margins that they would want,
they wouldn't have to for what this costs to make. You would see this for at least $99
easily.
So.
And those are the considerations that the consumers. I hope you guys understand that. This brand was started by a desire and a need from two guys sitting around, having a frustration with what they wanted in the marketplace and what wasn't there, but somebody knew what needed to be there. And it's still us. 9 years later, it's still that desire and that need is there. And I get very defensive of you when I hear a lot of these other people coming into the marketplace. Look, I'm a capitalist, so I'm all encouraged. Somebody wants to step in the supplement space, be my guest, right? But do it in a way that we did, in which, we did it the right way. We never, and everyone says, oh, you guys took shots at, we never did. We just sat there and said, here's what something needs to be that's going to give you a result. I'm sorry if the product in your cabinet doesn't have these ingredients. You might want to go look. That's as far as it ever went. And a lot of people who are now trying to come into the marketplace, and many of them, I'll be honest with you, they're the guys who are in the forums. These are guys who were in forums years ago who didn't have a platform, that all of a sudden this thing called YouTube, this thing called social media, they put their little thinking caps on, they read a research study, large in part the studies that you used to write with your colleagues that were published, because I don't see any of their names on the freaking, bylines. And they're basically regurgitating nonsense for their own benefit of trying to say, I have an argument that is against Jym Stoppani, and I will welcome anybody who wants to come here. We will fly it. And you want to have an ingredient debate? with you, I'd love to have it. Not with you, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I've seen this happen. I would go to conferences were they conferences or the shows? Remember them with the Birmingham and was it
There have been the conferences, expos.
Yeah, and literally watching this, and it's like you have these presenting people on stage. You get, the best guys on stage, the minds on stage, and it's hilarious because everyone just asks a question in the audience, and all of them look at Jym first, waiting for his answer first, right? Waiting for him to speak first to get the sense of where they stood based on what they were going to discuss, because they didn't want to get freaking lasered off stage by speaking, as you said, a little bit of ignorance is dangerous.
Yeah, a little bit of knowledge.
A little bit of knowledge. And I witnessed, yeah, right.
Because that little bit of knowledge causes the ignorance.
But I've witnessed that, guys, and I will say this: there is you've been an icon in this industry. You've done an amazing job to help myself, to help hundreds of thousands, I know for sure, and quite possibly millions of people who've done your programs in the past. And I'm just so fortunate and so lucky to say that I can't wait for some of the things. I know we didn't get a chance to get into some of the other things like I wanted to, so we'll definitely have to kind of get to
we'll
it
do
too.
This again.
But we're getting the wrap sign over here because I think the battery on the cameras might be done. You and I can do this like all day long, guys.
Seriously.
Like all day long.
For hours and days.
I know. No time limit next time, Mikey. I mean, come on, what are we doing over here? But look, man, I'm super excited that we were able to do this, that we were able to do it here. I want to do it like as much as we possibly can. I don't think that anybody will get exhausted listening to you and having some of the pivotal questions that quite possibly some of the other people are doing. Because again, you, as I said at the beginning, and I'll say at the end, the source of information always needs somebody who is in the crowd asking them the question, because you're not looking for a guy like you. There's millions of people out there who are looking for somebody to come to because they have questions. They want knowledge. They want information. And I've never seen anybody being able to give it to you, to give it to the audience in a way that's up here. It's not, let me look at it. There's no one like you. And I want everyone to know that. There is nobody like Dr. Jym Stoppani. Nobody. Nobody in this industry who's done more, in my opinion, other than maybe Joe Weider and quite possibly Bill Phillips. In the past we talked about that, but there is nobody who's done more for this industry for good beyond the expectations of having a brand grow than this man. And it is my goal to make sure that every single person who crosses paths with this brand and you understands that and feels the same way. So super happy to start this. I'm happy about this podcast, that we're going to do it, and I want to do it more, Jym. So thanks,
Definitely.
man.
Oh, are you kidding? Thank everyone for listening.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, hey, until next time, I think we're going to have to kind of do a take two because we didn't get to a lot of things today. We got to talk about Jym's new program, Project X. We got to talk more about Pre JYM X. We're going to get into the components of some of the new things like we hinted around. There's so much discussion here. As you can see, there's a lot of passion between what we do, and I hope you guys enjoy. Jym, final sign off.
I just want to thank everyone for your trust, your support, and for watching the content. Appreciate you all more than you know.
Awesome, guys. Take care.